Hello, wonderful people. Shaun Tucker here, coach, trainer, and the man behind the mic in the brand new podcast, How Are You Really Mum? With the fresh male perspective, this is a place where we will unveil the layers and celebrate the woman behind motherhood. In How Are You Really Mum, we acknowledge the joys, the challenges, the growth, and the tears. I hope you enjoy the show. I'm joined with an amazing young mother here. Very good friend of mine who I love dearly, Monique Patter. And Monique, would you like to say hello?
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's an absolute joy, and I can't wait to share your story about being a young mother because you've got a 1-year-old son, and I'm sure for you it's just been quite an awakening experience in many ways for you. So, yeah, would you care to tell us all a little bit more about that and how it's going?
Well, yeah, as you said, I've got a 1-year-old son, and it's weird because you said like it's such an awakening, and I agree with you. It's like totally an awakening, but at the same time, it's like it feels so organic.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't. I don't know. Like I still feel so much like myself, but just like as a mum,
Mm-hmm. Tell me
I
more
don't know
about
if
that
I've
evolution. Yeah, that's interesting because it sounds like you pulled
yeah.
yourself back but evolved into a mother, right?
Yeah, literally. I feel like that was like for my husband and I, we both decided that we didn't want to like fit into some kind of like mold of what like motherhood or parenthood in general was. Like we wanted to make sure that we were staying like so true to ourselves
Mm.
because that is A, important for our own sense of well-being and who we are, but also um, so that the way we raised our son felt really authentic. And I don't know, like I hear there's like such a negative rap about motherhood nowadays. I think like
Mm.
people are so exhausted by motherhood and parenthood in general, and I think like being ourselves in parenthood just makes it not exhausting.
I
I
can't
would
agree
say.
with more with you. Like I've got a 4-year-old
Yeah, as a new dad
girl,
yourself.
right? So I'm a new
Did
dad.
you say 4-year-old dad?
4 month. Maybe I did say four
Four.
4 year. I meant to
You
say
did.
4-month old.
4-year-old.
A four
Gee,
month
she grew
old.
up quickly.
It's actually 4 months to a day today, and
Really?
it's
Oh,
it's been a
happy for
joy
me.
in many ways, but also like I
Yeah.
see, just like Andy and like your husband would have seen for
Mm.
you, like you went on this kind of like a roller coaster, right? Like you
Yeah.
suddenly have a little thing, a little life growing inside of you,
Mm.
and it grows and it gets ready to come out, and then all of a sudden you have this big baby inside you, and it's like, wow,
Yeah.
how am I going to get this out of me first and foremost?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't even. It's like it was so. I mean, it was a year ago, which is not that long ago. But now I'm like, I can't. I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
Like your wife did it. Like I would. So as a mother, I go through an experience, and obviously I'm like a year postpartum now. So it's very. It's weird that first year. I feel like every day is a new. You become a new person. You
Yeah.
become a new. Like you. There's something new in every day. What would you say your experience after 4 months is
I mean,
for
I, I
yourself
I
and
agree. It's a constant adaptation, and I've spoke
everybody?
to quite a number of ladies and mums in recent
Mm-hmm.
times since launching this podcast, but also just out of interest sake as well, just asking about their journey. And
Mm-hmm.
from what I understand, is the first one is very much like that. The second one, you kind
Mm,
of, if you decide to have a second one, that is, of course, it's
mm.
different. And then the third one, and then when someone takes the child away, it's like, well, life is so weird and so much easier with one less child. Whereas
Yeah,
if you have one child taken away, it's your only child, just for a little while. Like
yeah,
if, say, if your husband decided to go away for a boys trip and he took your 1-year-old son
yeah,
with him, right?
yeah.
It's like, how would you cope? Would you know what to
Hmm.
do with yourself? It's like all your time,
Oh,
all of this time resource just opens up for you.
literally. Well, Andy took him for an hour on Sunday, um,
Hmm.
just to, oh, so cute. He took him to get a little baby chino at our local cafe.
Cool.
Um, And he was like, do whatever you want. Like, just, I want you to not do the cleaning. Don't do the dishes. Like, just do what you want to do. And I had like full plans to, I'm writing a screenplay, and I like was like, I'm going to sit, I'm going to get 1 full hour of like writing this screenplay. And he left, and we were going to church that morning. So I like did my makeup, did my hair. That was probably like 20 minutes. And then I had 40 minutes left. And by the time I'd like potted, like, you know, when you just do like little stuff around the house,
Yeah.
The hour had passed and he was home, and I was like, I did nothing. Like, time just passes, and it's like you don't even know what to do with the time you do get,
Yeah.
because there's so many things you could do.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like time works differently when you have a kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
It like bends the law, you know, just
I can't
there's
agree
never
more.
enough time for everything.
I can't agree more. And I'd love to perhaps lean into that a little bit more, because I know that there's going to be a lot of new mothers that will listen to this as well and probably hear your story and be like, wow, yeah, I'm going through that right now. And, you know, I think after watching my wife go through every single day, like you said, is a new day, but it's a different day. Like, you think you have a routine, and if you're really set on your routine before having a baby, like I can't do mornings, I can't do nights, whatever it is, all of that stuff goes upside down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say I've handled all of that very, very well. And like without a doubt, I've had my moments. Like, you can't go through anything in life without having your moments. But
Yeah.
I made like a big commitment to just trust my intuition with myself, but also with my son. And we do have a schedule, because every person will say kids need routines, and I completely agree. But by the same token, if you become so strict in your routine that you can't see when your child needs some, like, you know, like, can you imagine saying to your kid, like, it's not 3 p.m. so you can't have your nap yet,
Yeah.
but he's exhausted, rubbing his eyes, crying. Like, can you imagine just being like, it's not 3 p.m. yet, you cannot go down for a nap? Like, no, I'm going to put my child down for a nap. Or he refuses to go to sleep, I'm not going to make myself go crazy trying to put him to sleep when he's obviously not tired. Like, I think we sometimes see children as like these little robots, and they're just going to do whatever we want to do. They're going to nap when we tell them to, XYZ. And it doesn't work for everyone, but I would say if you're like struggling with your first, if you're struggling with your child and feeling like the routine is like suffocating you, like, try loosening the routine a bit. Like, it's not going to kill them. In fact, it's going to make you more relaxed. It's probably going to relax them, because if you're relaxed, your child's going to relax.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And our kid is so chill. Like, we can pretty much take him anywhere, do anything with him, but he also will stick to a routine where it's necessary.
Yeah. I think the key there,
so,
what you just said, is having flexibility, but still
yeah,
having some sort of guideline, right? Or it's not
like,
really a
structure is
rule.
good.
It's not a strict rule. It's more about being flexible around a framework that you have. When it comes to, the sun
exactly,
rises every day, it falls every day, usually with 2 or 3 minutes between every single day, right?
Yeah.
So our systems work similarly to the way that the sun operates. And babies are super sensitive to, you know, what we're feeling, what we're going through.
For sure.
And, you know, if we're very rigid people and we're very strict and uptight, you know, that baby's not going to be very relaxed.
Yeah. And I noticed it. Like, Andy and I went through this, I think it must have been like 6 months ago. We just had a period of being like really stressed about money. And we were like, there was a weekend where we were both like really on edge, really stressed about it. I can't believe how different his temperament was, our son's temperament, just based on like us feeling collectively. Like, if it's one of us, the other person can kind of like even him out.
Yeah.
But if both of us are really stressed, like, he just latches onto that energy. Like, yeah, it's so important, like, looking after your nervous system, especially in the first 9 months. Because I don't know if you know about it's in the first 9 months, the baby and the mum's nervous system are like intertwined.
Interesting. I don't
Yeah,
think I've
so
seen
like,
that, but I haven't come across it, but I've certainly seen it. You know,
yeah.
completely
So
reacting
if
to
your
the
system is
mum.
like so dysregulated, yeah, then your baby's nervous system is going to be dysregulated.
Yeah. So, Monique, if it's okay to
Mm.
ask, I mean, how
Yeah.
was it like for you to transition from, you know, every girl will go on a journey of becoming not necessarily a mum, but they go from being
Mm.
a little girl to being a
Mm.
woman, right? To now, well, you're on the next step of being a mother, right?
Mm.
How has that been for you?
Oh, man. Oh, it's, you know what's so weird is it's hard to even like remember life before it.
Hmm.
Like you know that obviously there was a life before your kid and you've got all the memories from life before your kid,
Yeah.
but it's like to think about that transition, like I think, you know what? I think if I really think about like there was a moment and that was when, so after he was born, and so we had like a really, really beautiful birth. Like it was exactly how I had pictured it. Um, and afterwards, like we're quite holistic. We don't like medical intervention where it's unnecessary. Like obviously there's exceptions, but like we like to avoid as much as possible.
Hmm.
And so we had like a fully physiological, like no intervention at all birth. And then afterwards, he had to go on antibiotics for a couple of days. And so we'd noticed that there was like something off. We thought his breathing was a bit off. Um, and the doctors were kind of like, oh, we don't really know. And then they monitored it for a little bit and they were like, look, we really think this is the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Obviously, like antibiotics was just not what we wanted. Like we really just didn't want that for him. And it was the moment I think where I felt like I really became a mother was that moment where you have to make the decision for your kid that maybe you don't want to make. Like we didn't want him to be on antibiotics, but what was the risk of that? And you have to decide like the risk versus reward, and you realize that like there is no good decision, there is no right decision, and no matter what decision you run with, like you're gonna have consequences.
Mm.
Um, and I feel like that was the moment I was like, okay, I'm like making decisions for another human now.
Yeah. You just gave me
I'm happy to
goosebumps, by
run
the
with the
way.
consequences. Oh, really? But I can live with my own consequences, you know, like if let's just say I eat bad food that gives me a tummy ache, like I'll just deal with it. That's my consequence for myself.
Yeah.
Now I make decisions for my son's consequences. Like if I give him, like for example, he has a dairy allergy. If I give him milk, he's then going to have all the problems. That's for him now that he has to feel that pain.
Yeah. Based on a decision that
That's,
you made, right?
yeah, like that for me was like, whoa, like I've been living for myself for 28 years now. I'm not anymore.
Yeah. Wow. And that in itself is huge. Like, I mean,
Mm,
you kind of, well, tell me a little bit more about that. So when, I mean, I think I remember a story you were sort of saying, like you went to a
mm.
cafe and they said, look, this is dairy free, but in actual fact it wasn't, was it?
Yeah, yeah. I asked for almond milk and they gave me full cream milk. And like, oh man, my mama bear just, it came out strong that day. And it's so silly because like if it was someone like before I had a kid, I probably wouldn't have understood like the fact that like I'm here to protect my kid. Like his life is in my hands. So when I ask you for almond milk, like I'd expect almond milk, and I just it's like in any other circumstance, I'd be like, oh my gosh, get over yourself. But like you just can't explain that little instinct that comes into you that it's like I'm always ready to fight for my son. I'm like always ready. I'll like knock anyone out on the street that comes near my son, like in a bad way, you know. Um,
And you
like you
just said it.
just I can't explain the instinct you get.
You just said it. This child life depends on you,
Mm, mm,
literally. Like that is, he's involuntarily given you 100% of his life to you.
yeah.
And that is such a beautiful
It's crazy
thing.
when you really talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world where we outsource our life to someone for our well-being, right? We will go to a doctor and say, fix me. Like I'm getting this problem or whatever it is. If it's something more severe, like a stage 4 cancer, right? We going to a doctor where we're just like, you're the specialist on this. Please help me. You're putting your life in their hands, and you're doing that willingly. And the thing with the kid is they're doing it 100% willingly because they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right. So that is so beautiful and sacred, I feel. And I could see that now. So thank you for opening my eyes to that, because maybe it was there
My pleasure.
before, but now I
Oh, you
understand
wouldn't
it
know.
more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's actually like it's like inexplicable. You can't, unless you've experienced it, it's hard to understand, I think.
Yeah. And so many people perhaps don't understand it until they go through it. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
And it doesn't matter if you have kids that are 1 year old, that are 2 months old, or 20 years old, or even 60
Yeah,
years
I
old.
think it'll always
That
be
child
there.
will always be
Yeah,
your child.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
like that responsibility never goes away, whether they're like completely independent or, they're a little baby who can't even walk yet. Like I feel like that both I think the motherhood and the fatherly instinct will just always be there. I think
definitely.
they both function slightly differently for very important reasons,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I feel like, and this is just through my observation, through my own experience too, a mother, there's something in the physiology that changes, right? Is that when
Yeah,
that baby
yeah.
starts crying, and I'm sure it's not the case for every single mom out there, right? But from what I've observed, from what I see, the physiology like acts up. It starts literally crying with the kid, and there's something that just makes you go and pick that kid up and be like, no, it's my job to soothe you. Like it's my job to
Yeah,
protect you.
yeah.
And they say for a man, provide and protect. But actually, if you think about it more, I guess short term, is that mother's job absolutely is to provide and protect safety absolutely for this child.
Andy sent me this really interesting video on Instagram last night, and it was like about how a father. So a father is expected to we're talking about quite traditional gender roles here, so
Yeah.
not sort of like modern interpretation, but the man is expected to like provide, but also the man wants to spend time with his family, obviously, and the reason that he is providing is because he wants his family to have a good life.
Yeah.
But in order for him to do that, he actually has to step away from the family, and he's going to be away more. And if he's at home and he's spending time with the family, then he's probably not providing. And it's like that weird and like kind of sad dichotomy that like the man, like I think
It's such a paradox.
women have really hard, but like that's also really, can you imagine, you would experience like as a father, like you want to be around your family so much, but in order to give them the life that they deserve, you can't be around.
100%. And it's something that I've certainly struggled on because, I work in a business that's pretty volatile. Like there's no
Yeah,
guaranteed amount of income every single month, right?
yeah, especially when you own a business. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Running my own
which
business.
is like
So
handy.
what work I put in, and when the baby's crying, I'm working from home, right? So when the baby's crying and I'm on a Zoom meeting, like something inside of me is just also crying with that child. Like it wants me to go
Yeah,
out there and just be like, sorry, person, I've got to stop coaching you right
yeah.
now. I've got to go
And
tend
how
to
do you
my
have your
child.
attention on it as well? Like if your attention is then split between your child and what you're doing in front of you, like it's hard to give everything 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do madly respect people in similar situations, but also the ones that, they go to offices and things like that. I don't think it's about them disconnecting, because what you said, I absolutely agree. Like we do have this kind of paradox, right?
Mm.
Is that in order to provide, well, sometimes you got to do the things that you don't want to do, and you kind
Yeah,
of put your own needs so far behind, but I think there's such a big disconnect about understanding each other. And this is where I'm hoping, and I'm putting so much faith and hope into this podcast for this reason, is because when we talk about the issues, the problems, they become more prevalent. But if we just try to understand a little bit more, not about the problems, because they're only symptoms, right? But try and understand each other a little bit more. To be understood, seek to understand. That's really the motto of how I live my life now. And I probably have been doing that since, my origin story of this, the reason why I started this show. Because I've been a keen observer of life in so many ways and trying to understand how I fit in to this weird world, strange world, right? And that life is still happening no matter what. And when we have all of these kind of things that are put upon us, like the COVID pandemic that happened, and it's still not really dealt with mentally, right, in so many ways. But it's like, how do we handle ourselves to understand each other? Because if people are still stuck in their fear loops, well, it's not safe to go outside. It's not safe to even take my mask off. I'm scared of getting sick, right? These things are horrible. But if you don't put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand where they're coming from, there's no way that we can actually come together. And this is the same thing for a man and a woman, right?
Yeah. And I truly believe that when you heal the family unit, I think that's like one of the keys to creating more peace in the world and like more understanding in the world. And I would say that in this past year, and I know this is not the case for so many families, but in the past year, like being parents has brought us to understand, Andy and I like to understand each other so much more, and helped us to communicate so much more and like try, I think in a marriage and a partnership, you always are going to be like, the other person's got it easier than I do. Like I'm tired.
Yeah.
For example, at night, Andy comes home from work and I'm like, thank goodness someone can take my son for 5 minutes, but then I have to respect the fact that he's been probably on the top of a ladder all day long with like a 25-kilo piece of equipment minimum, with it above his head all day. He's exhausted. He probably has been spraying weeds and needs to shower, and having that understanding. But then he also comes home and respects that I'm trying to cook dinner for us. Like, and so just never being like, I have it worse than him, so he should take on more, or like, it's just learning to just have so much empathy and grace for each other.
Yeah. And you said it, I think the communication is something that I've learned in my experience of becoming a dad. And, I've been with my wife, we've been married for 5 coming up this year, 5 years, but we've been together for 12. 5 years we did have a long distance relationship. So communication's always been an interesting one. And you're right, like having a child, you guys are on the same team, but getting to know your teammates is actually the key to not just winning, but being okay when you're losing, right? I think
Yeah, that's so true.
it's maybe hard to grasp for some people, but it's okay to lose, right? If you're okay to lose and you're okay to win, well, life, you can still be wonderful within yourself. But if you're losing and your team is losing, right? There's no one that actually wins, but it comes down to that
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah, for sure. But I feel my heart just like breaks when I read. I'm on this like forum. There's an app and a whole bunch. It's an American app, so it's like mostly Americans who post their like issues. Like it'll be like, oh, my son needs to get rid of his dummy or something. Or people, a lot of people will comment like their partner does absolutely nothing, like
Oh,
just ignores them all day, doesn't support them. Like they've pretty much raised their child alone, and I just like my heart just breaks because I truly feel like the reason that I've had such a good first year is that support, like both from my husband, but also family as well.
yeah.
And there are just so many people who do not have that. And yeah, I think that's like I don't want to say make or break, but like that defines your first year, I think.
I can't agree more. I mean, I'm only 4 months into the first year, but
Mm.
yeah, I mean, there are so many people out there who perhaps they put the need of having a kid before the relationship, right? If your
Mm.
relationship isn't kind of open and ready, like the child's going to bring things out that, maybe you're
Oh
not ready
yeah,
for.
yeah, oh yeah. I think parenthood. This is actually something that my mum has said. When you get married, that person is going to bring out all the things you need to work on.
Yeah.
And then I think it's the same with kids. But I think when you have kids, it's a bit more, it kind of like brings out like the little child in you, I feel, and like the things that felt broken
Yeah.
from you as a child. And so it's like this real healing journey of not just raising a child, but you're healing yourself as you do it. If you're aware of it, like if you can tune into yourself and actually acknowledge that there's issues, then you will heal it. But otherwise, it can create so much, I think, discord between your partner if you're not aware of that.
Yeah. And I do, like, obviously I know your husband, I know Andy, right? And
Mm.
I know in the lead up to you guys actually having a kid, he went on a huge self transformation journey. And I know you've been on it for quite some time as well. So, how
Mm.
much do you think that whole self transformation, that whole self awareness, and just growing your awareness, how crucial is that to maybe succeeding at maybe not being a parent, but just in your own
Yeah.
happiness on this journey, like being able to embrace the through part of the journey?
Yeah. Look, I'm trying to think of even like pinpoint the time where I started being like more self-reflective and more intuitive. I can't even. I think it was. I think that in itself was a journey.
Yeah.
But I think it just helps you to like cope with daily life. You know, um, I trying to like so I work for a company. I do marketing for a company that's like a postpartum wellness company, and we worked on a post a couple of weeks ago about how society is like um, the consumerist culture is like designed to separate the mother and the baby, essentially, like
Mm,
giving us all of these
interesting.
different tools and medicines to stop the mother and the baby having like to disconnect the mother baby connection. Um, and I think this like journey that I've been on has kept me really connected to that, because it's so important, like both for yourself and for your child in the long run, for their independence to maintain the mother baby bond.
Mm,
And I think that intuition that I have been developing, and that sense that like I know in my heart what's right, that has like literally been, I would say, like the undercurrent for my entire motherhood journey. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, as I said, like getting there was a journey in itself, and it's hard to talk. It's hard to like talk about it because it was like it's just this thing that kind of like eats away in the background and starts to like flourish, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's right. It's when you start paying
yeah.
attention to the roots rather than the fruit, right? Because we all
Mm.
come from places that either helped nurture and nourish ourselves, or
Mm.
perhaps maybe the roots were poisoned.
Mm.
It all comes back
Yeah.
down to what are we feeding ourselves from not
Mm.
not just by painting on the fruits to make them look pretty,
Mm.
because so many people cover themselves up on the outside by wearing so many masks and
Mm.
so many layers.
Mm.
And I think the beauty of what you just said is, there's this kind of, I guess, social norm that this division is happening. And I remember watching a video of something to do with co-sleeping with a baby, right?
Mm.
And in Australia, they don't recommend it at all. Whereas you go into like other parts of the world and it's like
Mm.
they encourage it. So that
Yeah,
child
I
feels
literally,
safe.
yeah, I remember. I had that. That was something I didn't really know too much about. I always liked the idea of co-sleeping, but I didn't really know, I didn't know how to safely do it.
Yeah.
And I remember when my son was maybe 1 month old, and my sister-in-law and my brother came over with their kids, and I was talking a little bit like about our sleeping situation, and my sister-in-law said to me, you know, more people are co-sleeping than you realize. It's so common now. People are just told they can't talk about it because it's unsafe, and so no one talks about it. And then that's actually where the problems come in, because people then do it unsafely.
Yeah.
And that's when you run into problems. But like, it is the norm around, you know, my brother's friend, he's Indian, and he grew up co-sleeping with his family, and that was just like, it's not a thing. It's not even like a conversation. And we ended up co-sleeping after about 3 months. It kind of happened by accident. And it was actually because my son was sleeping in his cot in his room. And I would wake up in the middle of the night to breastfeed him. And then one night I actually fell asleep while breastfeeding him, and he rolled over, and I woke up and he was on his tummy. And you know how they have like the little suits where their arms are up like this?
Yeah.
He's like on his tummy with his arm like this. And he was like going like this, trying to get up. But obviously he was so young at this point that he couldn't actually like lift up. And like, thank goodness that he was able to move his head from side to side, because it woke me up. And it obviously like kept him alive.
Yeah.
He didn't suffocate. But that was because like I was so tired, and I didn't know how to safely I wasn't planning on co-sleeping, and so we just were not set up for it. I fell asleep anyway, and that's just going to happen. Like I'm sure I'm not the first mum that's happened to, and there'll be so many people who would be like, "Oh, you did the wrong thing," whatever. But it's like, I'm sure it's happened to so many mums before.
Absolutely. And really, I mean,
Yeah.
the whole point of this show is to share the real stories, right? It's to understand that you're not alone. What they're saying is science is not necessarily based on your subjective way of dealing with the situation, right? Because there's way more alternatives out there. Like over in Asia, they encourage it, like I said.
Yeah.
And there's no like set limit age or when the child will stop co-sleeping with you. You know, the child's going to develop at their own rate.
Yeah.
And we do get in
And they
this.
can feel so safe and loved. Like, yeah.
We do get in this kind of, you know, dark side of comparing, right? Comparing our children to another child, and then comparing our relationship to another relationship. And it's just this never ending competition. But competing against what, right?
Yeah.
When we get to the understanding that we are the ones that are responsible for our own joy and happiness and our own well-being, we can't outsource that to someone else, right? Although we do trust, like I said before, when we have some devastating sort of diagnosis, we're going to go to someone and say, help me. We're trusting them with our life, right? But it's still being able to take responsibility for how we are. And it's so important.
Yeah. And the comparison game just is literally just the thief of, they say comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that's so true. And especially during motherhood, I think I've definitely found that, like, setting my own journey and not looking at what society, especially like as a whole, would a view of my journey, like completely deciding what is right for me, what's right for my family. And I think the more people just stay in their own lane and just set their, you know, set what it should look like for their family, like people will just be so much happier and so much less stressed.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fine to voice your opinion, right? But it's just how we take it, how we take someone else's opinion.
Yeah.
We take it on.
Yeah. But I do have to acknowledge, like, I understand that not everyone is so privileged. You know, like everything we say is from the lens of being privileged.
100%. Yeah.
You know, and I can harp on as much as I like about, like, do your own thing, do what feels right. But like even things like going back to work, like how many mums would love to not have to go back to work, but they have to because their partners don't earn enough money. And so they can't listen to that instinct that tells them to be at home with their baby.
Yeah.
Or like even the privilege of like the journey that I've been on to listen to my intuition. Like some people live in a state of fight or flight because they're in poverty. So how are they supposed to tune into their intuition if they're in fight or flight? Like, yeah, everything's just from the lens of being privileged that I can kind of decide that for myself.
Yeah. Being privileged, but deeply grateful, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you're a
for sure.
person of deep faith, and, you know, I know that you have so much gratitude for being in this privileged place,
Mm.
because it really
And I hope
does.
everyone had, I hope we all get this privilege one day, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Mm.
There's something you just mentioned, and I want to just touch on it for a moment. And
Mm.
that is, you know, you're working, right? How was that transition
Mm.
for you to go back to work, knowing that, you know, probably, were you working from home actually? I'll start there.
Yeah, yeah. I was working from home. The only thing I wasn't doing from home was teaching at the gym. When I was coaching at the gym, that was like the only thing that was like out,
Yeah.
but obviously not in an office setting. And I stopped that at like 36 weeks, I think,
Yeah.
when I was 36 weeks pregnant. Um, that, to be honest, has probably been the toughest transition for myself. Has been like I love to work, um, and I quite love like the social side of working as well.
Mm.
And so I think the biggest transition has been not being able to, like, ultimately, like, my baby is always number one. Like,
Yeah.
even no matter how much work there is to do, like, if my baby needs me, like, my baby needs me. Um, but it is really hard to juggle work and a baby. And I think, like, I made the choice to work from home, and I'm so grateful and I'm so lucky, but it is definitely not without its challenges.
Mm.
Um, and especially, like, I work during his naps because I try as hard as possible not to be on a device when he's around. Um, but it definitely presents challenges. Like, I feel like every moment is like accounted for, and like especially like we're a digital company, so um, I could get a message at any hour of the day that I have to address,
Yeah.
and like I'm expected to be able to address it as soon as possible. um, and I think I never really understood mum guilt until I became a mum, but it's just like the feeling when you have to respond to something for your kids, like, you know, jumping on you, or like if I sit on the floor next to him, he'll just jump all over me and he wants my attention. And he's like, what's going on in this phone? That is so interesting. And I think of it through the lens of him. And I think he's thinking, mum thinks this rectangle is more important than I am.
Yeah.
And that just like brings me so much guilt. But at the same time, I'm like, this job brings me so much fulfillment, and my career and my aspirations for my career bring me so much fulfillment.
Mm.
And I think ultimately that wins because I'm a better mother because of it. But it definitely doesn't mean it's without its challenges and the guilt that comes with it as well.
Yeah. I mean, it must be tough, really, because you're
Hmm.
right. You are still your own life. And I think this is
Hmm.
the other thing that many mothers struggle on, but I'm sure being a child, we're all children, right? We're all children of parents. We
Hmm.
both have a mum and dad. We all have mums
Hmm.
and dads, whether it's, you know, whatever is happening in your life, whether they are still here, whether they're
Hmm.
not, we still come from that place. But what you said there, you know, if there's an unmet need within that child, you know, if they think that they're not important, but your rectangular device, this little black box, is more important than
Hmm.
them, like how do you deal with that?
Yeah, and it's the foundational, like they talk about the early years and what that does to build their, like, their network of their brain, and just those simple things, like they may seem so simple, but if you're constantly showing your child that something else, it doesn't matter if it's a person, whether it's your phone, it doesn't matter what it is,
Yeah.
that person, that child is still building something in their brain that tells them that they're second. And that's foundational to their self-worth in their life. And I think we underestimate how important those first few years are.
Yeah. And I think what you just
um,
said there is so foundational, but at the same time, like I said before, you're still living your own life. You still want to live a
Mm,
fulfilled life of your own.
mm,
So this is where it becomes a real dilemma and a paradox in so many
yeah.
ways. But the other side to it is like, I guess for you, just connecting and being aware of it, it means you're so much more further than most people who are just doing it so super unconsciously. Because
Mm,
simply being aware of it means that, yes, maybe your child thinks that for a moment, but at the same time, it's how you use that awareness,
mm.
right? Because you're making a
And coming back
choice.
into more ways.
Yeah, because you're also, if you're completely focused 100% on the child and the child's needs and missing out on your own, well, they're also a mirror of you and you're a mirror of them, right?
Mm,
So they're also going to see that and possibly take all those, like, I have to live my life outside of me. I can't live it with inside
mm,
of me, if that makes sense.
yeah, for
And that's
sure.
something that I've
And I
struggled
think
on.
that's, yeah, I think for any parent, it's it's hard because I think on some level, like intertwining your identity with your child, I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that. And I think society tells you like, oh, you've got to have your own identity, all this stuff. But
Yeah,
to some extent, I think, and now I get this. It's like my child is my whole world. Like, of course, my identity is going to be intertwined with my child, and I'm going to talk about him a lot, and that's actually fine. Like, it's okay for me to talk about my child a lot.
absolutely.
It's okay for that to be, the biggest thing going on in my life, and it's not always going to be that way. Maybe it will. I don't know. Who cares? But like, yes, I have other things going on. Like, I just joined a gym, which has been like a huge thing for my like sense of self.
Yeah.
And even like as I like breastfeed less and less, like I feel like my hormones regulate. I start to feel like I've got a bit more like fire in me. um, and I just like trust in the process, like if I'm trying to explain it, like every day I think you just evolve, and like you've just got to trust that. Like, don't try to push how you feel. Like, you don't have to listen to what someone else says about how you should be in motherhood. What feels right for you, just like trust that. It's like all gonna, you know,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes total sense to me, and I can see that you're living proof of that, of tapping into yourself. Right? You're really
mm,
tapping into that inner tuition, that inner
mm,
knowledge that your body already knows what to do. Sometimes we struggle in our mind of, we take on all this other information and this other knowledge from outside of us, but
mm,
this system we have is made up of millions and millions of it's millions and millions of years old. I think it knows what it's doing.
yeah. Speaking of, he's just crawling up towards me.
Cool. Well,
Mm,
before we finish, I just wanted to finish on one question that I think might help new
absolutely,
mothers,
yeah,
but it also will potentially be a nice reflection point for you, Monique. And that
yeah.
is,
Ooh.
you're a 1-year-old mum, right? So if
Mhm,
you could, knowing what you know now, go back to a
mhm.
year ago and just tell yourself something, what would it be?
I know exactly what it would be because I actually said this to someone the other day. It would literally just be, "It is all going to be fine." I just remember like we had so many, like for example, the first 3 months we had so many breastfeeding struggles because my son had a tongue tie, and he was underweight, and like he was feeding for like 2 hours at a time. Like it was like I would say that was the biggest struggle we had in the
Yeah.
first few months. And I would stress about it and I would cry about it. And I would just want like him to be okay and to stop crying. And he's fine, like he eats perfectly now. Like, we're still breastfeeding, even though we had all of those troubles. I don't think we're going to stop anytime soon. Like, everything was fine, and it's not to take away from the struggles, but it's just saying like you're going through this right now. It is going to end. Like, nothing, like the struggles you have are not going to be forever.
Yeah.
So just keep on keeping on. It's going to be fine. Like, yeah,
That's
it's
amazing
so
wisdom.
simple, but thank you. it's going to be okay. That's it's pretty simple, but
No, it's so relative though. And
yeah, I think it would have helped me to see myself now and see like it's fine. Like,
yeah. And we have to go through it, right? We can't avoid it.
yeah,
It's something that we're all going through.
yeah,
The only way to go through is to
yeah,
walk through the doors. You can't walk
yeah,
around the
yeah,
doors, especially if there's walls, you
yeah,
crash into
for
a
sure.
wall.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
Um,
Well,
mm.
Monique, thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate
Thanks so much for having me. It was nice to chat.
it's I hope that you've enjoyed it once, and
I
I hope
have.
everyone else
It's
has
like having
enjoyed
a
it.
directed catch up with you.
Yeah. And that's how I want it to feel, right? Is it's really just a conversation that we lead through the conversation, help to
Mm,
understand and share the stories that maybe you'll hear at a cafe, right? You probably hear it at a cafe, but you won't necessarily hear it online. So
yeah, for sure.
that's the point, is just getting
Yeah.
to the real parts of the journey of motherhood, and for also,
Mm.
some of the single fathers out there who are forced to become nurturers. I'm going to have a
Oh, that would be a nice
I'm going to have
interview.
a guest on who was actually calling me
Oh,
earlier on my mobile phone while we were recording. He's
oh, nice.
going to be a guest on this show because he has an amazing story about how he had to
Yeah,
become the nurturer.
cool.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, I look forward to hearing that.
and yeah, is there any last things you wanna tell our viewers, Monique?
Oh, the only thing I can think is you just said something before that, like, what I would love, like, to see happen in general, like, in the way that we see motherhood is, like, women to just stop having so much shame about the way they do things or, like, to just trust themselves.
Yeah,
Like, and listen to other women tell their stories and don't shame other women. That's even that, like, just stop shaming other women about how they want to do things and what's right for them
yeah,
because you're not in their shoes. So leave them be.
agree. Couldn't have said it better. Thanks, Monique. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in
Thank you
today.
so much, Shaun.
Can't wait to see you guys in the next episode. And if you want to see Monique on again, please leave some comments below. And yeah, we'll put it on. Thanks so much, guys. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us on this heartfelt journey. Just a reminder to please subscribe, tune in, and become part of our supportive community. Because mums, you're not alone, and the world really needs to know, how are you really, mum? See you next time. Bye for now.